So once it's been wrapped and then unwrapped, it doesn't stick to itself anymore. So I recommend you bring in a Tupperware or a big one of these type things that you can you can wrap it back up and snap the lid on it. It's going to make it a lot easier in the long run. It'll last a lot longer. And when you get this out, it's going to feel a little bit on the hard side. And I don't normally like to just break it. I usually, have a bench knife, but I didn't bring one out, so I think that's about enough for that for now. So I'm just going to wrap this back up, and then I would be snapping it into a container if I was wise. If we take care of this, it'll last for 3 or 4 weeks easily. If you don't take care of it, in a week it's going to be too dry to work with. Okay, so I'm going to set that out of the way. You can use either cornstarch or powdered sugar, and what makes this easier is just to make a ghost. Okay, put a little in some cheesecloth and just dust your area. I didn't have him make one, so. All right, so when you get this out, it might feel a little bit on the dry side. You might need just a little bit. You can see it, not an awful lot. If you work too much into it, it'll fall apart. And you're going to knead it for just a second, and this is exactly how you're going to treat your fondant too. You're going to take it out, you're going to knead it, you're going to put a little bit of shortening. Okay, once it's soft, we are going to walk you through a couple of basic flours. And the reason, Dee?
Yeah.
I forgot my tools. I haven't got my tools yet.
Are they
Do you know where they are?
Upstairs?
They're in that drawer, in a whole pile of Cornell spoons and tools. Are all together in that top drawer. Okay, so we're going to start out with the rose, just because the rose, if you can do a rose, you can do like 19 other flowers. It is a flower that is wired because we hang it upside down. Now, there are ways to do this. Let me just get an example. There are ways to make a rose off a flower, and we call this a ceramic rose because it's still pretty, it still looks like a rose, but it looks like the kind that's baked onto the side of a teacup or something. It's kind of stylized. It doesn't look real. It's not supposed to. Okay, and this is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with making roses like this. I will show you this. If you struggle with the other and you like this look, I'll show you how to do it, but I'm going to show you the other one first. What you have to do is you start out with a very small egg shape that's attached to a wire. And the wire, he didn't do it because I told him to put a hook on it, and he put the hook on the wrong end. So what you want to do is you want to take your needle nose pliers and make a little hook like that. Okay, you're going to dip it in the egg white and insert it into your little small egg-shaped. Now, I like to smooth it down. You see how he left it kind of just blunt? It's still going to work, but I like to smooth it down so it tapers right into the wire. Okay, so you got to make these a couple hours in advance, because if you just stick the wire in there and begin to attach, as we put each layer of petals on, we hang it upside down, and that'll just fall off. Okay, so I usually make these the day before, but you need at least an hour. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little, I don't have a ghost, so we're going to take this gum paste, we're going to roll it out very thin. The biggest problem that we have normally with people making flowers is they don't roll it thin enough, and then it looks kind of clumsy. So you're going to roll this quite thin, almost until you can see through it. Okay, so we're pretty thin. See how thin that is? I think I made it just a little bit more even. It's quite thin. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take one petal off because I'm going to wrap this. I'm going to wrap this around, and what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to use this one. Make sure it cuts cleanly. If it's rough, the edge of your petal is always going to look rough. It's not going to look good. If you need to, pick it up you know, and just push through like that. Make sure it cuts cleanly. Immediately take this and wrap it. Somebody put that right back in there. I need one more piece of plastic, Dee.
Yep.
I'm just going to use this. I'm going to put this right over the top because this is going to dry out immediately. Okay, so now here I've got this little piece that I'm going to use to wrap around the top there. So I'm just going to thin it out a little bit. Oh, I already had one. And what I'm going to do is create kind of a thin, ruffly petal. And for this first petal, it's not that big of a deal because what we're going to be doing is totally wrapping that. So it doesn't matter if I get the edges all perfect because it doesn't really need to ruffle. It's going to lay flat. So I elongate this a little bit so that it can wrap all the way around this. Now, where's my
little brush?
Little brush right there. Now we're going to put just a little bit. Oh, this is not clean. Of course not. Yeah, the brush is a little dirty, but okay. And what I want to do is I want to create that spiral right up at the top, and I don't want this little thing right here to show. Okay, so we're trying to create that little loop at the top. Don't worry about the sides. Look, it's showing through at the side. Don't worry about it. All I need is to have a loop up at the top. And then if it's not sticking, just a hint of glue right there. Make sure you cannot see this. I don't know how many roses I've seen in competition where they did a pretty nice rose, but that's the center of the rose. You don't want to see it. Okay, so once we get that covered, now we're going to move on to this. Okay, we need to thin the edges out because otherwise they look cut. And the more you rub right on the edge, the more it should ruffle. You see how it's starting to ruffle a little bit? If it's not ruffling, you've cut it too thick, or you've rolled it too thick. You just go over it a couple of times until it begins to ruffle.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Where's my middle?
Yeah, I wanted to do
I like the middle one better. Okay, do you see what's happening on the edges? That's going to create realism. So you have to do that on all your petals, no matter what, unless it's a big, thick, waxy looking like a gardenia, then you wouldn't do that. But normally you have to create realism by going over these petals and causing them to flute and ruffle just a little bit. And I am going right over the edge. I'm not going to create a line right through here. I'm really right on the edge.
How hard are you pushing?
So then you just cut like that and see they're turning into little petals. Now 1, 2, 3 go in this way. And I'm going to flip it over for 4 and 5. And they're going to go back the other direction.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Now, here's my little guy right here. What I'm going to do is going to lay him right over the top of that hole. And this just helps me hold it in place so these petals aren't all hanging down. Okay, so we're going to start out with a little glue right in the center, and we can glue the edges down later. 1, 2, 3. So this is the first one that's going to go up.
Oh, into food cake, Victor.
Yeah, he just went in there.
Okay,
Good
I
call.
thought it was the fire alarm we had to
And the
use it.
second one, and then the fourth one. And don't get a lot of egg wash on here, just a little bit. And then the fourth one comes up here, and you create that little 3-petal one that we learned earlier. Now, see right here where they need to overlap? We've got to put a little glue right along the edge there. and anywhere where you need it to stick and it's not, little touch of glue, and it should overlap. And then you're going to come in and you're going to flute these petals out just a little bit, right along the edges. It'll create realism. Now, I don't have a lot of these, but many of these have a hole in the middle, and that's what it's for. So you don't need this big thick one. Okay, now the other two are going to go up right where you think they should. You didn't put the hook in it.
Dee's fault.
Oh,
It is
snap.
Dee's fault.
But now we know why the hook is important.
Yeah, now you know why the hook is there.
Thanks, Dee. I was
Okay,
teaching you all what not to do.
that's right. See, there's a reason why. But see, because of that, Dee's going to come out of this, twice as good as he was when he left. When the first one came out, because you forget. You do things once and you forget. When you have to do it 10 or 12 times. Okay, so there
Is our cake done?
in,
I bet. I bet.
That's perfect.
is the center of your rose. Okay, we're going to do that 3 times. All right, now what I want to do, I can't, but what I want to do now is hang this upside down, because I want the petals kind of open like this. If we lay it down flat, it's going to look like that. If we set it up this way, it's going to all open up. So we're going to kind of flute the petals back just a little bit. A little more glue right there. And then we would hang this upside down, and you'll get a square bottom if you're not careful. So I just go in there and round that up just a little bit, and you're going to hang that upside down. After you do 2 more of those layers, you have a full open rose. Now I'm going to try to do the next layer, but I don't know if it's going to hold because of the. So here, you're just going to hold this one. I'm going to give it a try. But yeah, don't forget the little hook in there. It'll just pull right out on you.
So how long do you wait there before?
Here's the thing about the roses. If you're doing, say, a dozen roses, by the time you get all 12 done, that one's ready for the next layer. I would say 15 minutes, and then you can add the next layer. So it's not an awful long time, but you don't want to put it back to back like I'm doing it. I'm just doing it because it's a demo. And so we're going to do the next one, and this one we are not going to go 1, 2, 4. This one we're going to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and that if your rose is really small, you might find you might need to do 2 rows of but I'm using the big cutter, so it'll probably be fine with just doing starting with petal 1 and ending with petal 5. But if it's looking a little crowded, you'll do 1, 2, 4, and then 3 and 5 will go up last.
Is the gum paste that you buy from the store bad or less quality than the homemade kind?
I don't like the Wilton.
Okay.
I especially don't like Wilton fondant. Wilton gum paste is okay. It's not terrible, but it's not. I like this stuff better. Okay, so we got it pretty thin. We're gonna go and do our next layer.
Hurry, Rapper, hurry. Do you always leave it white and then hand paint it?
No, you do not. If you are doing a dark red rose or a black color or dark purple or anything like that, you need to color the gum paste prior to adding in the Tylose. Okay, because if we add enough color to turn that black, that may be 2 or 3 bottles of color, and it will break it down. So what we have to do is we have to add it prior. Then the Tylose ties up the moisture, and it's usable. Otherwise, you are stuck with airbrushing for those dark colors. If you want a light pale color, what you want to do is color your gum paste a couple shades lighter than you want it, and then we hand color with powders later to darken it. So never go in as dark as you want it. You always want to make it a little bit lighter, and then I got a little bit of a rough edge there, and then we hand color with the powders. Airbrushing is acceptable. I don't like it as well as the hand painted ones. I don't think it looks as real, but it's still fine. It's just a different look. I don't think you'd do it if you were looking for realism, you know, making something look really absolutely real. I wouldn't use an airbrush, but it works fine.
Just buy the real cloud and stick it to the kid. It's so much easier.
So I'm just going to roll all these in the same direction now. But I could flip them over. The reason for doing some of them up and some of them upside down is so that they don't all come up like a tulip, like some of them are going out. And it just creates a little more realism. But we could do the same exact thing again. I should have brought my glasses.
Me too.
Headache ever since.
Squinting at that slideshow.
Why you have glasses?
They make my job.
I had cataract surgery a couple years ago, and white on white, I cannot see definition. So I have a hard time seeing exactly what's going on the surface of this thing without my glasses. But
It's okay, they'll still look better than the others.
and black on black, I can't see either. The other colors are fine, but white on white is the hardest.
She has a year or two more practice at this than you guys.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, it's kind of blurry to me right now. I'm just kind of going, is it happening? I can't tell. I think it is.
That's pretty much what we're all going to be saying, and we can see.
Is it happening?
Is this happening?
Is it working?
Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to cup it again. And that just gives it that more realistic look. So now we're going to slide that right back on top of here. I'm going to poke a hole in it with this one because that one's going to fall off.
I did. I just put the hook on the wrong end.
Yeah, you put the hook on the other end, and I had to straighten it out to get it goes through there. Okay, and a little bit of glue right here at the bottom and on right in the center of each petal. And we'll see where we need each one to be stuck down and where we need each one to kind of and they should overlap. I need to really pull that down harder, but I don't dare.
Just pull it right out.
Yeah, it's just going to fall out. But it's not as flat as it needs to be. My petals aren't coming up quite as tall as they need to be. And that's because I got this bump on the bottom that I can't get rid of right now. But yeah. I think I am gonna go with the second one with the 1, 2, and 4, because I am getting a little bit crowded right there. Okay, and then we're gonna come up with the other ones on the outside, and then the next one I definitely won't need to do that. You kind of just have to look and see though, depending on the size of your rose. See, I need to be able to push that down solidly on the bottom because it's all loose down here, and I can't, but you will be able to because you're not going to do yours this way. Okay, so there's the second layer. I'm just going to pull that off. It's not helping me at this point to have the wire on there, so I can't hang it upside down if I pull it off, but it's just going to fall anyway if I take the wire off, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and then go back in and flute the edges out. You've got to create realism by just fluting the edges out. So this is our second row, and you need to do 3 rows. to get a realistic looking rose. So there's our second row, and see how mine is sliding down? Those are lower. That's because I can't pull down and tighten it up. They really should be the same thickness or the same height. And I only had him make these an hour ago, so that's part of the problem. You need to let them really dry.
So would it be smart for us to make a whole bunch of these?
Yes,
today?
if you're doing a whole bunch of those, what you're going to do today is make all of these and let them dry overnight. Okay? You can give a couple a try, but you're going to struggle with it like I'm struggling because I had to pull the whole thing off. Okay? So, and then you're going to hang this upside down, let it dry, and the last one you're going to leave open. Okay? You're just going to overlap them a little bit, attach them on one side, and let them kind of flute outward. And
The paper, Marion.
Oh yeah, the paper.
When I was paper, you chewed on paper.
okay, so I would, if I was kneading this and I needed to use it and I accidentally pull it, I would then just set it inside an egg carton lined with foil. I'll just set it right inside like that. It'll hold the petals up without letting them, and it'll dry. That's how I work with these when I do these. Once I get enough petals on, I just set it in an egg carton and let it dry. Okay, so I've got two rows right now. I'm not going to get the third because I pulled this off. So, and I don't know if any of these are really going to hold because there was no hook put in it. Nope. They're not going to hold. Okay, so anyway, those of you who are going to make roses, if you need 10 roses, make 20 because a couple of them are going to be ugly and you're going to break a couple. Okay. And when you get it all up there, you always wish you had one or two more because now it looks skimpy and you always go, oh, I wish I'd have made a few more. Now, anybody wanting to do daisies?
I can adjust it more than you.
I need a toothpick. Okay, daisies and wired petals. A daisy does not have to be wired. But a lily does. A lily, what we're going to be doing with a lily, I'm going to probably need just a little bit more to do.
It's a cute one.
You're too quiet.
Now, the good thing is I've got a center for this that's a mold, because making a center for this if you don't have a mold is kind of not easy. The good thing is we've got a center. The center should be colored before you attach it. We had somebody color it after, and it came out pretty good, but it made it a lot harder than it needed to be.
Centers are lilies.
The mold, like
It's on my hands. We have them. Okay, I don't think it's this one though. We have the same kit.
Okay.
That's mine.
So-
It's cooler than yours.
When you do,
this one.
My kid would obviously.
yeah, this one.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, well, I probably didn't get it lined up good enough, but there we go.
Good job.
And this doesn't always come out really easily, so you just take one of these and just kind of help it along. Don't stretch it. And usually what we want to do is 2 of these to create a daisy. And what you're going to do, now, if you look at the instructions on the Wilton packet, and look, I double cut it, so ignore those ones, is they just are putting a little ding in the center of these and stacking them. I like it. I think it looks better if we take a toothpick, or they also make tools that are,
It's much more.
and we're creating a little, we're thinning the edge out and causing it to roll up like a flower really does. So we're just putting a little pressure and rolling right in the center until it cups just a little bit, and then it creates a little bit more realism than if you just cut it and stack it. Now, once you get done with this, we're going to go in and we're just going to put these little dents right in here. And you'll need 2 of these. I'm just going to cut this in half and use half of it. I have nothing to cut with, though.
Yeah, I didn't see your little powder.
What do you want, like a bench scraper?
I'm just going to cut it in half.
She's using
Just because I'm out of gum paste, so.
I don't know, that's too big.
Okay, so once we get all that ruffled all the way around, you're going to lie it in one of these, right? And then you're going to come in with the other one right over the top. A toothpick works better than this because you can see that's just coming off everywhere. I'm gonna take my glove is getting caught on the little
spinny part?
toothpick. And no one's going to eat these, but you still should be, you know, not wanting to put contaminated product on there. So once we get that thinned out, you're going to put a little glue right in the middle, and we're going to offset this so that they're not totally lined up on top of one another. Okay, and then what you have to do is you have to go in with, do you have any more of these?
What is it?
Toothpick.
These toothpicks. Well, we don't, look how it just goes flat on top of itself. What you want to do now, there's a little glue there, and you're going to come in with little sticks, I guess we could use wire too, and you're going to lift them up in certain places so it doesn't lie flat. And you're going to let it dry with the toothpicks all around it, and then you can easily pull them out once it's dry. So we just don't want it to go flat and look one-dimensional. We're going to ruffle up some of these top petals. And there's glue, there is glue, I didn't put glue, but there is glue between these two. Okay? And if you need to go in, oh man, those are all stuck together. If you need to go in with 20 or 30 little toothpicks per flower, you do whatever it takes to get it to look more natural. So you always want a few of them up in the air, a few of them laying flat, and you don't want them exactly on top of one another. Okay, and now we're going to just take a little bit of this.
What
Now-
mold is this for?
That is a dogwood. The bigger the center, the more it's going to look like a sunflower. The smaller the center, the more it's going to look like a daisy. Whatever you are going for is what you're going to. So press that in there and then round it up as it comes out because it's going to come out with a little bit of a kind of stuff along the edge. So just round it up. A little more glue. That goes right into the center.
Is that something you're just gonna paint with colored powder or make little?
I would already have that dyed. And then what you're going to do once it gets all done, unless you've got a bright yellow flower, then this needs to be colored. But if you don't have it, no, there's none under there. If you don't have a bright, if you just want to do a white daisy, what you're going to do then is come in right along the edge with a hint of lime green.
Oh, yeah.
Or if it's dark, if you've got a dark center, you go right along the edge with a tiny hint of powder right here, and then lime green around the outside, and that's going to give it realism. This is one that was just kind of laid on there flat, so I kind of like to fatten these. You look at daisies, they're never pointed like that. They're always kind of square on the end, so I kind of like to do it the other way, but this is what it looks like when it's flat. I would take these little ones and for like, what is it called? The Gerber daisy. That one, that big one, the double big one. Make some little small petals and tuck 4 or 5 right around the center. I wouldn't put a small ring like that. I think it just makes it look too fake. So I would, and I wouldn't use this when it's too big, but you'll get the idea. So we're going to create a little petal here. Yeah, I'd use that one. I'm going to use that one. And I do these one petal at a time. I wouldn't try and cut out a whole thing here, just one petal at a time. And the smaller it is, the harder they get out. So, okay, so now that I've got this, I'm going to thin it out. Where's my toothpicks that are all stuck together?
Nice.
Thanks, Dee.
And see how it curls up, and then wrap it around and pinch it like that.
Oh yeah.
And those are the ones that you find periodically growing right out of the center of a Gerber. Oh, turned upside down. No, it didn't. I just can't see. Okay? 4 or 5 around there makes it really look realistic. Whereas that, just cutting and putting on, I mean, this is decorative and it's stylish, and I don't mind this, but if you really want to make something look real, you have to do all the little other detail work. This can be dark brown, this can be yellow, this can be many different colors. If you want to do a surreal cake out of blue and red, it could be all sorts of weird colors if you want. I don't really care. I don't like cakes like birthday cakes and stuff done with blue, but wedding cakes, you do whatever your customer wants you to do. If they want a blue cake, you give them a blue cake. So I don't have any rules. However, when you do your birthday cake next week, please no blue. No blue.
This is an example of how it's that color when they made it,
Actually,
and
that's
then
sugar.
it's been colored. This is
That's
sugar.
full sugar.
Is it really?
It's crystallized.
No way.
Wow.
Show me that. What the heck?
Yep, I made that for a.
Oh, it is.
But that's still kind of how it is.
Waste of time.
As
It
far
looks
as
like
you
I'm
massage.
What a
Massage
waste
is
of
a
my
lighter color,
time.
and then you darken it in.
I want to make it.
The possibilities.
Okay, now and since mine's falling apart, I really can't show you this. But when you get done with your flower, you need to put a little cowlick on the back. And basically it's just a little cutout here. And you're going to thin it. This one hasn't really been thinned. I'd like to see the edges thinned on this one. It needs to be thinned a little bit more, and we put a few fine cuts in it for realism, but she's cutting straight in. You want to cut just barely along the edge. You've seen how, if you look at a real rose, it's kind of feathered right along the edges. She just cut straight in, just right along the edge to create a little more. The flower should look as good from the back as it does from the front. So I don't ever want to see anybody putting a flower like that on their cake. They all need to go on the cake with a finished back. Okay? Now, let's get some powdered color out. I don't care what kind. A pale pink or something. And a clean brush.
Oh, that's what she means by the wire.
Okay, now with wired petals, the thing about wired petals is we can move them around. So when you go to tuck it in and it doesn't quite fit, now it does. With this, if you make a big rose and you need it to fit in a spot and it doesn't quite fit, there's nothing you can do about it. So when you're doing a bouquet of roses, it's really hard to get them to fit together nicely and not have big holes. With a wired flower, it's a lot easier. What we do with wired flowers is we're going to, where's the rest of that? We're going to roll this out, leaving a thick layer down the center. Okay, not really thick, but thicker. So what I usually do is I usually just roll in from side to side and leave that ridge down the center and thin everything else out, especially the edges. And we have a clean brush somewhere.
Yeah. Double checking this one. It's the cleanest one in there.
Should we bring
Now,
our brushes?
if you'll notice, oh, this one doesn't have one. Some of these have a ridge along the back, and you can actually roll this right on there, and it creates a little ridge, and that leaves room for your wire. If you don't have a little ridge along the back, you can still just go from side to side and leave yourself a little ridge. Okay, see that? That's where the wire's going to be, so that's where your cutter, lily cutter,
Lily?
that's where your cutter's got to go, right through there. Small, any petal cutter is fine. Okay, so I'm going to put that right down the center. That's where your wire's going to go. Make sure your edges are not really thick, because once you cut it, if you end up thinning it out, then all of a sudden your petal goes from here to here.
Do you have the right texture, Pat? This one?
Give me the press. Do we have the press out? It'll work.
This one?
Give me that. It'll work. I do have a press that'll work.
Oh,
So what we're going to do is we're going to thin out the edges. I'm then going to press it on there, and if I need to rethin the edges, I will. Sometimes when you're doing a veining, you will destroy your edges, and they might need to be
Is this the right one?
Non-toxic, non-edible.
Yeah, that'll do.
Well, in case you do, it's not
non-toxic,
gonna poison you if you don't eat it.
Wow,
but
that is
if you
cool.
eat it, then it will kill you.
Let's see. Okay, there I see now.
Make you a little.
Know what I'm gonna go shopping for?
I've got a little bit thick right on this one edge, so I'm just going to thin it out by
buy
hand.
Those are
starting
like
picks and stuff like this one. You can buy a set
Well, I
of
won't
those.
get the
for-
texture ones. Look at these.
I'll create my own texture with my hand.
This is about
You can get
one.
these kits at like Hobby Lobby.
Okay, now I'm going to just press it down on one of these.
Look
Now,
on Amazon.
I kind of like this veiner right here
You should look
for
on
certain
Amazon
things,
for
but
already have all
this works too.
Screw you.
It comes as a full set.
It's about $30.
What do you just type in?
Yeah,
It's better to
mine.
get 50% off.
And it
Hobby
comes
Lobby
with
with
those
the
two.
coupon.
About a set like
I
this.
don't know,
Okay.
coupon.
It leaves a very subtle veining mark that when we begin to hit it with color, it'll pick up those veins. It doesn't necessarily have to be super dramatic now. Well, you should have got it right down the center. See how I got up to the side? Pay more attention. And I need the small wire unwrapped, the ones that are already cut.
Yeah, these teeny
Yep, right
ones.
in there. Okay, so then what we're going to do for a daylily, they're not super fluted, and for an exotic oriental lily they are, but for a daylily, I would just thin it out. For an oriental lily, I'll just keep going over and over until it begins to ruffle a little bit more. You can also go back in, and if you're handling it and the ruffles kind of come out, you just put them back in with your fingers. So now we just dip this in our glue, we flip it over, and we insert it so it doesn't show, hopefully, right into the petal. It needs to come up about this far, so like 25% of the way. It doesn't need to go all the way up though. Okay, flip it over, make sure it's not showing through, and then we usually want to lie these and let them harden on the wire, laying over something so that they're curving back just a little bit. Okay, once we get a whole bunch of these done, and we can curve them back as much as we want. Some lilies are really curved and others aren't. It just depends on the look that you're going for. And I kind of like to cup it around the edge just a little bit. Okay, and then once all the petals are dried, then we wire them together, creating a little stamen, and then these are just boughten. I think he needed a few more of these though. I don't think there's enough. It looks like some fell off or something. And he didn't wrap it quite tight enough. They should be movable, but they shouldn't be doing that. But that's easy to fix. All I need to do is rewrap the bottom piece. Okay, so we get our pieces all done, then we assemble, then we hand shade. Okay, hand paint each one on there. You can see he's got green. That's not typical on a lily, but you know, it's his color scheme. I don't
Is
care.
it normal that it's like really
Ruffling?
waffle? Yeah.
It depends on the
Ruffled?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lily is usually ruffled.
Alright.
This is like an oriental type lily, so if you want that, you need to have a little ruffle. If you're just doing a plain day lily, you don't need ruffle. You just need to thin out the edges. Okay, so I would make 6 of these. You need 6 for each flower. Count on 1 from each flower breaking. So do 7 for each flower, and if you think you need 3 flowers, make 5. Okay.
Okay.
So now there's just a smattering of kind of what can be done with it. So if you have light colors and you just want a hint of color, you can use white. And to color something with powder, get most of the powder off your brush, and we can go in a little bit at a time. If you get too much powder on your brush, it just blotches. Okay, and we're just going to kind of buff in color. Okay, and if you want it darker,
So
go
pretty.
over it and over it again with light. Don't try and put a lot of color. And then fade down to nothing or whatever. And remember, the back of your petal needs, and look how subtle that is. You'll never get that with an airbrush. Airbrush is color, no color. Okay? So, remember, the back of the flower has to look as good as the front. The only time I'm going to tell you to load your brush and go for it is if you're trying to do like dark orange. You're going to do a medium orange flower if you want it dark orange, and then you're just going to nail it with tons of powder. Then what we do to set this powder is we hold it over a steaming water bath for about 3 seconds, and the powder's set. Okay, so the back should look exactly like the front. All right, and then that means going in and doing these one at a time. If you don't want to just do the edges, you can, like this one's been shaded in the center down here. That's fine too. It just depends on the look that you're going for.
What if you're doing the yellow rose?
Same thing. You're going to go in with a 2 shades lighter than you want that rose to be, and we're going to hand darken it with powder. And that way you'll get the play of light, you'll get light and dark, you'll get shadows and stuff like that. It'll look a lot more realistic. So whatever color it is you're using, unless you want blood red or black or dark purple, you're going to go in 2 shades lighter, and we're going to hand color them to finish them.
Cool.
And hand shading can take a little while. It'll take 5 minutes a rose. So if you got 30 flowers, you know, you're going to be shading for a couple hours. And don't rush it. A little bit goes a long way. Put a little bit on, look at it. If you want it darker, you go over it with a tiny bit more. And that way you'll keep it realistic instead of streaky. If we just load this up and put it on, it will tend to streak.
Just like
And the only time that's going to work for you is total saturation. If you want to make something dark, 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 then that works. Okay, so there it is. We're starting to get a hint of pink. Most of the time I wouldn't recommend using white unless that's the look you want. Just a hint, a kiss of color, a very pale color. Then you use white. Otherwise you're going to need to color your gum paste. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, if some of you have already talked to you and told you kind of what you need to be doing, the rest of you I need to find out a little bit about your plan, even though it's not complete. What are we going to get done today, basically? These don't snap on and off easily, so make sure that you really lean on these, because otherwise they just end up all over the place. And I can't buy these locally. I have to have them shipped in. I don't know why nobody sells them, but they don't. They sell like 3 colors at the Wilton, and that's it. We probably got about 150 colors. And I have to have them shipped in, so just make sure that the lids are snapped on really good. Okay, so if you're going to be